Okay, so now we're speaking about how the prophet goes about experiencing the prophecy and what had to be done to arouse that. Now, it didn't necessarily need to be through this, but one thing that it had to be would be through happiness. The prophet has to be in a state of happiness. So what practically did they do? So the Rambam says, the Bnei HaNeviim, Bnei HaNeviim means those that were in a process of getting prophecy, they would have lifneim nevel v'toif, they had harps, drums, v'chalil, flutes, v'kinor, and lyres, and which was like a 10-string, and they would play music. So you could imagine, you have like, Yonatan Razel, and you have Zusha there, and you have the greatest musicians around, and they're starting to jam. And we're not talking about regular jamming, we're talking about like super conscious, greatest musicians in the world. You have King David, playing his harp. And the prophets are there, and the jam is building, and it's building, and it's building. And it would arouse, and the music was holy music. The music could not be like, dark. It had to be holy music. And it's fascinating that the music itself would arouse them to a state of happiness. And through that, they would be mevakshin ha-nevuah. They would start bringing and yearning and tuning into that prophecy. Yes?
Prophets had servants, correct? Like servants in their service and all that?
Not necessarily.
Well, they had followers, certainly.
There were many different types of prophets, millions of prophets. Some of them were more public, some of them were not. Prophecy was an individual thing. Right, that a person, if a famous prophet was like a Rebbe, you would, like a big rabbi has a lot of people that want to hear his wisdom. If somebody was so perfected that he received prophecy, he would have students that would want to learn from him.
Right, because I was just thinking, what if prophets had servants or people that followed them so that when they needed, and specifically ones trained in playing instruments, so that when they needed to conduct prophecy, they have them right there.
The Chevera, they had the Chevera. Yeah, they had an in-house band.
Right, because I imagine way back when you can't just find a player instrument everywhere you go.
I think they had schools of prophecy. They had schools that were like academies of prophecy in Lahavdil, like Professor X and like his Chevra over there, like Lahavdil. But you understand, for many people in the world, that's like, I could a little bit understand, like this exceptionally gifted place, like that idea, Lahavdil, meaning it's not exactly that, but at least to give you a dimyun, a semblance of what we're talking about, is that there'd be a place with gifted individuals that they would be those that are mevakesh prophecy, the Bnei HaNeviim, and they'd be playing music in that place. I'm telling you, when Chaim Guri played last Thursday night, I felt like this is the beginning, that acoustic, small room, packed, the feelings of the notes that he was touching. It was so moving. It was so much pleasure. I think at one point I just said, whatever you do, don't stop playing. It's so good. That feeling of just that music touches you in such a beautiful way. That pleasure, that was the technology that was used to get the prophet into that right zone to be able to pick up on the broadcast of prophecy.
And in that regard, with the schools of prophecy, what was the requirement of people back then for entry?
So, as far as the requirement, this is something the Rambam mentioned in the earlier halachas, is that the prophets had to be people that were perfecting themselves in their character, people that were perfecting themselves in their midot. These had to be people that were wise. And we went through the different qualifications that a prophet had to have in order to gain the prophecy.
So not young people play.
It could be, but it had to be people that were accomplished. It had to be people that were accomplished and people that were really working on themselves. It wasn't just like some guy at just, he spent his whole life just, wasting his days away. And just, a slob, and, and he never spent time working on conquering his base desires. And it's not like all of a sudden one day he's just like, wow, in the middle of watching some Netflix something or other, it's like, I just had a prophetic experience. So that would be just an illusion. It's a person who spent years refining themselves, refining their character traits, being able to understand how other people work, to conquer his base desires. We're talking about real character refinement. Even some of the other things that we spoke about in the beginning, that the prophet would be wealthy, which would free up a certain amount of space, that he'd be able to have time to work on this. We mentioned that he was wise. The way the Rambam understands wealthy is that he was sameach bechelkoi. Ezu ashir, who's the wealthy man, like Pirkei Avos says? The one who's happy with his lot. So the Rambam's understanding of that, it was a psychological health and wealth that went together. That when I'm happy with what I have, I am a wealthy man. Yeah, Arya?
Would that apply to the Sanhedrin's requirement for wealth?
Yeah, so that's a machlokes. Is it like the Rambam, who says that wealth has to be something of a psychological, I'm happy with what I have? Or there are those that say it means literally. They had to be of means. They had to be rich. We do see that some of the greatest rabbis of all time were very rich. Moshe Rabbeinu, exceptionally wealthy. Avram Avinu, exceptionally wealthy. Yitzchak, Mea Sha'arim, exceptionally wealthy. Yaakov, exceptionally wealthy. Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, every phase in the transmission process, there was tremendous wealth involved. Practically, it allowed the sage to be able to have the means to go and travel and speak to all the sages of the generation, to get the entirety of the law together, to have it collated and then processed to be transmitted. On a spiritual level, it freed up space. It's called harchavas adas, that when a person has money, there's an expansiveness of what he could do with it. Yeah.
What if they go hand in hand, as in spiritual or mental health, and being happy with what you have, in fact, rewards you with even more than what you were saying you were content with? Like God gives you more.
I think so.
Even a good mindset can always help you get further in life.
I think that we do see that, is that a person who's happy with what they have, so Hashem says, okay, I'll give you more. If a person's not happy, he's always like, I have so little, or it's so bad. So Rav Nachman speaks about this. Where he says, if a person says, it's so bad. So Hashem says, you think this is bad? I could show you what bad really is. But a person who says, look how good life is. Hashem's like, you think this is good? I'm going to really show you how good your life can be. That you're the one that's creating your destiny. Hashem is following the orders from you. So when you go around and say, I'm so thankful, I have so much good. Hashem's like, no, that's not good. No, I'll show you good now. That's a good the good He'll give us, we can't even imagine how good it will be. Hashem is good, but He's letting us design our destiny through our free will. That's the amazingness of the not having the Nam de Kisufin and the bread of shame, of just being souls up in Shamayim, Tachas Kisei HaKavod, and Hashem saying, come down to this world that you could earn your eternal life. Yeah.
Let's say it really is bad. How do you think that it's good? At a certain point, it just becomes delusion.
I don't mean to say that a person is not struggling with things, and he's not, and if God forbid there's a tragedy, he's not deluding himself. But even within that, there's a certain amount of Hashem, you're with me. And we were learning in Rav Nosson that when King David, he was running for his life, and his son Avshalom was trying to kill him. And it says that he started singing a song to Hashem. It says that David was singing a mizmor, a song. And the Gemara says, mizmor? A song? He should sing Kinala David. He should be singing not singing. He should be saying a dirge. He should be mourning the fact that his son is coming to kill him. Like, why is he singing? So the Gemara then answers, because David HaMelech saw, King David saw, that, you know what, I know my son is coming to kill me. But, generally, children have some compassion on their parents. So Mistama, seemingly it's probably better that it's my son than somebody else. That he was finding a ray of hope, even in a difficult situation. That's one of the ideas. He understood that this is not a simple situation. But he found this ray of hope. And that ray of hope opened up more hope until he stayed alive. That he flipped the whole situation around. Hashem was saying, you think that that's a ray of hope? I'll show you even more rays of hope. I'm going to show you even more and more and more. More than you could imagine. So he wasn't delusional. David HaMelech was very, very real with life. Probably the most real human being ever. King David. He was so real. And he lived in the real world, which is that even when things are challenging, there's some ray, there's some glimmer that I can get hope from. And I could either choose to focus on that, or I could choose to focus on all the horrible things. So the prophet has his band, and these are the Bnei Nevi'im, and they're sitting and they're playing. It's very interesting that we love music. Music is so amazing. And humanity knows that music is very, very powerful. The Al-Shech HaKadosh says something very important. This is something that really shook me a lot when I first saw it. This is the power of having holy music. Okay, I know everybody got their Spotify yearly, reviews. Yeah, I'm like the 32nd most listened to on this, So it's good to do a bit of an audit and see what did I listen to over this last year? Was this, holy, or was this maybe other than? And it says that there was somebody in the Torah, in the book of Samuel, of Shmuel, and his name was Shaul HaMelech, the first king of Israel. And Shaul HaMelech got very depressed. It said he went into a melancholy. And nobody could get him out of this. And he said, there's only one that can get me out. David. David could get me out, but David can't come and, make jokes or something. I need him to come with his harp. And David came with his harp and he started playing music. Now you understand, when King David is playing music, when you have music coming from such a holy neshama, that music changes you. Do you know that the Yenuka plays piano? If you listen to his music, it is the purity of his soul coming through music. It is not from this world. I feel like it's touching on the music of King David. It's like a taste of the music of King David. So the Yenuka's music. So King David's music, he's playing music, and it's bringing Shaul out of his depression, out of his melancholy. So the Al-Shech HaKadosh says there, he says, we see a very interesting thing, that holy music has the power to bring somebody from the darkest depths. It could pull you out from the worst places. But the opposite is also true. Unholy music can put you into the darkest places. Music is so powerful that it has the power to, if it's holy music, to take you out of the darkest places. But if it's unholy music, it could put a person deep into dark despair places. Yeah.
In regards to Saul, wasn't there a part early on in his life, or during his kingship, I suppose, where he had come across prophets or a group of prophets, and I think danced with them, sang music with them, and he said a line that was very peculiar to me. He said, God had gave me a new heart.
There's an idea that when you start spending time around the prophets, that you will receive some of that light. You'll receive some of that ore. When you spend time with people that are doing something, it will spread to you. That's why you should choose your friends wisely. You should choose your friends wisely, because you take on a lot of what's going on with them. So if you start hanging out with prophets, you could be you're going in a good direction in life, Start hanging around like, Rabbi Rossman more often, and the Rosh Yeshiva more often. Good things will start happening to you. You'll start seeing your character traits changing and transforming. You'll have a new heart. You'll have a new heart. So here, and the Rambam is now concluding this halacha. Hey mevakshim es hanavua, and they were pulling down, and they were desiring, and they were grabbing this prophecy through the music, through the holy music. The holy temple, the Beis HaMikdash, is filled with holy music. The music of the Leviim, the schools of the Leviim. Yeah, Yosel?
Why is it that most popular music today is more on the side of Tuma?
I think because music, it comes from the sphere of Malchus. Music is very influential. And the dark side got a good footing into music. Because the dark side, the Sitra Achra, knows the power of music. And it knows that this is where we could influence people. And the power of music is such that music, did you ever find and pay attention that music is, you're so vulnerable when you listen to music. Like, you just most guys just like listen to music, they put in their Dre beats or whatever, they're just like, or they're like walking, they're just, like they're so receptive at that moment. Or they're singing words to something. Did you ever find, sometimes years later, that, I know this happened to me, is that I started singing songs that I heard when I was young, and then I realized I never even thought about the words that were being said, and I realized, oh my goodness, these are not that appropriate. But I was just like singing along, that's just, you're so vulnerable, it goes in so subconscious to you.
That's a subliminal message.
Forget about the subliminal,
Right, overt messaging too.
the overt and the subliminal beyond, and that it's encoding my subconscious with whatever these people are into. And I don't know what their thoughts on Torah Shabbat Pe'ar. I don't know. I never had a discussion, with certain band members about their thoughts on Moshe Rabbeinu. We never talked about Reb Nachman Breslov together. We never talked about Yerushalayim together. They are going into you. That's what the Al Sheikh HaKadosh is saying. That the music coming from King David, his soul was being transported into Shaul, and therefore King Saul could leave his melancholy because now he's receiving the soul of David in the music. And when David is coming into you, you better believe that you're going to start feeling more pumped up. However, if someone else is coming into you, I won't name names, but maybe someone who's not exactly like King David, let's say. So when he's coming into, when his soul is coming in, you better be careful because he's implanting his soul energy into you. And therefore, that's something to be aware of. I want to be aware of what am I letting in. And because music is so vulnerable, it's just coming in. I want to be aware of what am I letting in to my consciousness. So this is some of the powers of music. This is that music can be used to build prophets, which must be on the other side. It could be used for not so good. And therefore we should choose wisely. Choose wisely our music. Choose wisely the music that we expose ourselves to. Be aware that music done properly is the greatest, highest power of arousing happiness. And isn't that interesting that that's exactly King David was pulling Shaul HaMelech out of the darkness. He was cheering him up. But only King David could do such a thing because it needed to be holy music that could pull somebody. It said that Shaul was he was in the darkest of dark places. He needed a David to bring him out. So Bezrat Hashem, We should be zocheh to holy music, to be happy, to be filled with God consciousness, and through that we'll be arousing the powers of simcha, and then once and for all we'll be able to receive the great powers of prophecy. B'mhera v'yameinu. Amen.
Amen.
Have a wonderful day, my friends.